Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's a very great privilege to be here to speak to the SMMT. Somewhere where, without fear or favour, we can talk about big issues that really do impact our industry. And that's what I want to do today. I want to make a contribution to something that is being sort of lumped together and called the diesel debate. Although I have to say that of itself is something of a misnomer. Because what we've had so far hasn't been so much a debate, but it's been more of a diatribe, or at best, a monologue. Indeed, by focusing entirely on diesel, by calling it a diesel debate, those who are serious about improving air qualities in great cities like this one are setting their sights, frankly, too low. And ultimately, they really won't address the issue they are, or solve the issue they are claiming to be addressing. And you know what? We all care about it. We all care about the air we breathe because we breathe the same air as one another. So do our children, so do our families, and so do our neighbours. But the two things that we tend to address wrongly in isolation, global warming and air quality. So to put it simply, as one of my friends put it, CO2 is bad for the planet, NOx and particulate are bad for our health. And I like that analogy because I'm not here as a technical expert. I'm not here to give you a technical lecture. I don't want to blind you with any sort of science. But what I believe I can do is start to bring this debate to a greater degree of clarity in language that, frankly, every one of us can understand. Because we're only going to solve these problems by educating people so that they can start to make informed choices. And at the moment, there is real confusion where there needs to be clarity. So we started by going out and asked the public what they thought. We asked 1,000 of them. We did a piece of research amongst motorists. Of those people, half of the car drivers think that road transport is the most responsible for urban pollution. Well, that's not true. For example, commercial and household properties produce more than half of the particulates that pollute our cities. More than half of the drivers we spoke to don't know what EU6 standard means. A third don't know whether the CO2 emissions we want to curb should be attributed more to petrol or to diesel engines. And that's the same when it comes to NOx. When pushed on this point, they get it wrong. So here is the first of the tough choices these consumers face. In terms of cars, you can choose diesel to help you fight global warming or petrol for better air quality. Now think about that over a steak or a burger. The average cow emits the equivalent in methane in a year of the CO2 emissions from a petrol driving car over nearly 8,000 miles. Now, if you think I'm being defensive, I'm really not, and I'm not for two reasons. Those of us in the automotive industry breathe the same air as everyone else. And we all live in cities too, cities like London. No one thinks that pollution is a good thing. No one wants people's quality of life and health to be affected by simply breathing. The other reason is we in the automotive industry, and certainly at Jaguar Land Rover where I work, are proud of our record in cutting emissions for our vehicles over the last decade. Over the last 10 years, we've cut CO2 by a third. And we all know why there was that big shift to diesel and why the then government encouraged it and indeed incentivized it. It was to ensure that the automotive industry played its part in preventing global warming. We have. This, as an industry, have invested in our environment as much as anybody else. So that's why we've cut tailpipe emissions by 32% in the last decade. It's why we're investing so much in alternative powertrains and electrification. My own company alone has invested several billions of pounds in developing them. That's why we're moving to zero waste manufacturing processes, why all of our new factories in the UK are powered 100% by renewable energy in the UK. But looking back at some of the abuse the automotive industry is getting for that diesel policy, and the then government too, who introduced it back in 1998, it may demonise diesel, but it doesn't actually address the problems we're trying to solve. The impression being given by the way, the impression being given that the way to improve air quality in our cities is simply to ban diesel cars. Slam dunk, job done. But we know it's not quite that simple. Now take private cars for example. The diesel cars that Jaguar Land Rover and the rest of the industry produce today are comparable with the petrol ones in terms of the nitrogen oxide and nitrogen dioxide and particulates that they emit. There's been a seismic shift in diesel technology, almost eliminating NOx. They meet those EU6 regulations that half the drivers haven't heard about. To be fair, there's no one in London or Stuttgart where the bans are being suggested who believe that vehicles that meet EU6 standards should be banned. But that's not the impression that's being given. And false impressions create confusion in people's minds. And the people are the ones we're trying to educate, the car owners. So here's the truth. If you care about air quality in our cities, then there really is nothing wrong with buying a modern diesel car. For private users, the real issue is EU4 diesels and before, the last of which we produced back in 2009. But if we're serious about improving air quality, why is this diesel debate so focused on the private motorist? Is this debate all about motorists? If we were to remove all cars from the streets of London, what would the impact be? Clean air? Well, according to the London Assembly, private diesel drivers are responsible for 11% of the problem. And the new car owners, now with the modern diesels, don't really belong to that group. Trucks and vans produce 17% of NOx emissions, buses and coaches 10%, and then there's the London cab. When asked by the BBC recently about whether there should be a scrappage scheme for private cars, the transport academic Professor David Begg said no. The money would be much better spent on renewing London's bus fleet. The truth is that car manufacturers and the owners of the new cars we produce are not only part of the problem, are only part of the problem. In terms of transport, we need buses, taxis, and the local authorities that buy the licenses to step up to the plate too. Plans for them to reduce NOx and particulate emissions to zero by 2025 are estimated to cut the problem from road transport by 80%. Now that will be real progress. And that's worth focusing on. And the focus is what this debate really needs right now. If we as a society are truly serious about air quality, then we need to focus on all the factors that drive this issue. Then we might start addressing the fact that particulates emitted from domestic and commercial properties are more than 4 times as many that come from road transport. Now, we all know particulates are bad, and that's why we've cut them by 95% in our vehicles over the past decade, since the introduction of the diesel particulate filters. Yes, you heard me right, 95%. According to the British Medical Journal, particulates increase the risk of lung disease, strokes, heart attacks, cancer, even Alzheimer's. The British Medical Journal, too, have criticised the last government's diesel policy, but in a recent article, they said this: "We continue to make equally misguided mistakes. Emissions from domestic wood burning are increasing in the UK. They account for 17% of the PM 2.5 particulate emissions in 2013, only marginally less than the 18% from all road transport." Now, I don't want to stereotype, but I can imagine the well-intentioned London dweller deciding against buying a diesel car for environmental reasons as they sling another log into the wood-burning stove, thinking they're returning to nature. They're not. They're doing harm, and they're oblivious to what they're doing. The BMJ estimate each wood-burning stove costs thousands of pounds a year in health costs. They say, and I quote, "Solving the wood-burning problem could generate more benefits for less costs than solving the problem of diesel emissions." Now, I'm not suggesting for a moment that we start having a wood-burning stove debate. or diatribe. Diesel should and will play its part. But if we're serious about air quality in our cities, then we need to pose more profound questions than what we're going to do just about diesel cars. To say that banning diesel alone will solve our air quality problems is like saying you could end alcoholism by just banning beer. There are other sources of both problems. According to the GLA, domestic gas consumption is responsible for a third of NOx produced by inner London. What are we going to do about that? If air quality is going to improve, our vision has to be broader. Our focus has got to be a lot sharper than just the private motorist. Road transport might be a big part of the problem, but within that part, played by buses, taxis, trucks, is greater than that of private cars. The role of industry can't be ignored. If you think rail is immune, then I suggest you sample some of the air around these cities' train stations like Paddington. So while not letting road transport off the hook, a study from King's College in London suggested the damage done to air quality by rail sector could be seriously underestimated. The policy shift from petrol to diesel was a really well-intentioned policy with unattended, if not completely unknown, consequences. So this time, I'd ask that the policy is a lot more circumspect. Clamping down on private car owners will not solve this problem. Indeed, if that policy is not carefully handled, it may even end up delaying the solutions. Half of the cars that are sold here in the UK today are diesels. As I said, thanks to meeting EU6 regulations, they're not the same problem when it comes to air quality. But those sales provide the resources that we as an industry use to invest in developing new powertrains. We're moving to a mobility revolution towards autonomous, connected and electrified cars. It would be truly, truly tragic for our environment and our mobility if those developments were delayed because of the negative impact of mishandled, misinformed diesel debate having on our industry. If dealing with diesel curtailed the resources we need to build a better future, let's be more balanced how, in the short term and medium term, we address the problems and the opportunities that diesel and petrol present. We're on a journey to new zero emissions future, and the latest high-tech diesels in our cars are just as an important step in that journey. By 2020, just 3 years away, half of all the cars that we produce in Jaguar Land Rover will have the option of some sort of electrification. I would also ask that governments at all levels are not caught out. Our technologies are advancing at a rapid pace. Their plans for supporting them with the right infrastructure are not. If they don't catch up, who will then the public blame for poor air quality when the automotive industry has done our part, but there's nowhere to charge your emissions-free vehicle? It really is time for us all to work together to find broad solutions and not satisfy ourselves by identifying the simple wrong villains. Collaboration is how we are going to win. How we'll be able to create a truly integrated transport system where all sectors can play their part and mesh together. Manufacturers like Jaguar Land Rover continue to be a net improver. In the last decade, CO2 reduced by 25%, NOx reduced by 84%, particulates by 95%. And we've invested several billions of pounds in new powertrains and a factory to build them, creating in total almost 7,000 jobs. I'd go further to say we really are getting our house in order. We are investing in a cleaner future, and it's time for others to do the same too. If we really care about air quality, let's start by having an informed quality debate. Thank you.